Hello friends, this is Raghu Banda again, RK Banda. So today I will be talking about how you can leverage machine learning using SAP Analytics Cloud. So in the last two podcasts, the podcast number 4 and podcast number 5, we discussed about the different approaches like how you can embed machine learning into the SAP S/4HANA business processes. And in the podcast 5, we talked about the side-by-side scenario where how you can uh, build machine learning services on SAP Analytics, SAP Cloud platform, and how that can be consumed by the SAP S/4HANA stack. Now, in this podcast 6, the focus is on how you can leverage SAP Analytics Cloud as an extension in building machine learning services. So, as you all, as we have been talking about, there are different ways or the different roles when you are building machine learning, right? Like when you are embedding into the S4 HANA business processes, you have the application developer involved, and you also have the data scientist involved, and you also have the consultant involved to some extent in building these models or implementing these models and deploying them and so on and so forth. Whereas in the sake of in the while we are discussing about the side by side models with the consumption of the machine learning services from SAP Cloud Platform, we again had different roles like uh, a different kind of an application developer, but it's more of a data scientist, right? Like you have a data scientist, a data engineer, also I would say, um, who was more involved in building these models, who has more of these data science knowledge, right? Now we'll take a little different approach. So this is where with the SAP Analytics Cloud, a business user can also jump into the same scenario. So here, a business user who doesn't have much knowledge about creating data science, leveraging data science and creating modeling, or uh, he does not need to have knowledge about how to code or how to do some application development. So these two things are also not needed, uh, but he has the utmost business knowledge. So we are building it in a different way, right? Like in the embedding approach, you had more of a application developer kind of a knowledge with some data science knowledge. Whereas when we are building the side-by-side models with SAP on SAP Cloud Platform, whether it is with the AI framework, or the AI foundation, or with the data intelligence platform, you had more of a data science kind of a background with a bit of an application knowledge. Um, Now, in the sake in the context of SAP Analytics Cloud, here it is more of a business user role. So here, the business user is the key personality or the key person or the key persona here. So you come with a business knowledge. You know what exactly is the problem that your customers are facing, and now you want to address this problem. So you have the scenarios that are available in an SAP S/4HANA application, or you might have some additional data sets or additional functionality coming in from other peripheral networks like your SAP SuccessFactors or SAP Ariba or Fieldglass, or you can have a completely external third-party application, external application where you are getting the functionality or the data sets in addition to not only the SAP S/4HANA scenario. But the core thing is that, yes, since we are talking machine learning in the context of SAP S/4HANA, I would still like to stick on to the functionality or the concept that yes, we are building based out of S4 HANA. So what is happening here? You have, uh, as we briefly talked or we briefly touch based about the CDS views or the core data service views, right? Because these are the crux of where how we are creating one common model where you can take this model, build your analytics on top of that, or build your machine learning models, so on and so forth. Now, since that is our base foundation, let us take that base foundation and now most of the different scenarios that we talked earlier were that in these embedded scenarios we have in the business process itself, we have embedded machine learning. Or in some scenarios, what we said, we cannot, we did not want to touch, or it is more complicated to implement into the business process. So we said that we created a machine learning service and it was consumed by the S4 HANA stack. Now, what we are saying is that there are some scenarios or there might be some functionality where the business user is presenting this functionality to his customer or to her partner, where they want to explore different ideas about what kind of a functionality can be explored. In that scenario, what you could do, there, there are quite a lot of different quick win scenarios that you can build as a template or as a quick win functionality, but still leveraging some of the machine learning services. So this is where SAP Analytics Cloud could step in. And of course, again, I want to, if you broadly look into the concepts of whether we are embedding or building side by side, yes, this falls under side by side because this is not in the S4 HANA stack. It is outside of the S4 HANA stack. And obviously SAP Analytics Cloud runs on or based on SAP Cloud Platform, right? So it falls under the side by side category. But there is one key difference. The key difference is that here we are not building any complex algorithms. What we are trying to do, we know that there is some functionality that could be enhanced in the business process in S4, but we do not want to build leverage, or we do not want to, it is not a complex functionality. But at the same time, we do not want to spend a lot of time in enhancing the business process in S4. So this is where you have this beautiful option of exploring it with SAP Analytics Cloud. So your SAP Analytics Cloud is the answer where you can take a functionality that is available, a normal business process functionality that is available in S4, which is exposed as a whitelisted CDS view. This is very important. When you say whitelisted CDS view, this is a CDS view which is available for the customer or the partner to take the CDS functionality and extend it and create a custom CDS view on top of that, which means that you can enhance it. So that is the main requirement. SAP regularly uh, releases uh, these whitelisted CDS views, which means that your CDS functionality, uh, for that particular functionality, the CDS view is available, meaning we we have explored all the possible options of the different parameters that are available where you can enhance it. So it's like a statement, like in your previous body and BAPI days where the exploration options are available, which are open so that the customer can take it and build their bodies and then add it back as BAPIs, right? So in that way, we have this concept of whitelisted CDS views where the customer can take this whitelisted CDS view, create a custom CDS view on top of that and build their functionality. Now what we are saying is that you take this whitelisted CDS view, you build, you either do uh, a live connection to this whitelisted CDS view, or you do some data acquisition kind of a functionality by connecting with SAP Analytics Cloud and leverage the smart predict and the smart assist services that are available in SAP Analytics Cloud and build some quick win prediction scenarios. So you got the point, right? Like what we are trying to do, we are saying that yes, you do not have a complete use case to embed or put your efforts to embed into the S4 business process, or you do not have the whole capacity or the resources to build as a machine learning service on SAP Analytics Cloud with your AI foundation layer or data intelligence. So, but you still know that there is some functionality that could be leveraged by the customer using some core scenarios. That is where SAP Analytics Cloud will jump in. So you will say that, okay, I'll take this whitelisted CDS view. I have this functionality. I will extend this whitelisted CDS view, create a custom CDS view, and now I will connect to this custom CDS view from my SAP Analytics Cloud, either doing a live connection or doing some data acquisition. Again, there are different ways because some scenarios can be directly connected using live connection into S4 HANA stack and you can build scenarios, but in some scenarios you have to acquire the data sets and build a virtual data model on SAP Analytics Cloud. So that is the reason we have these two different options. And now once you have these two different options, what you do, you can go ahead and create a model using the SAP Analytics Cloud predictive services. Now let us go or let us discuss a bit more into what exactly you have in the SAP Analytics Cloud uh, smart services, right? Or your predictive services. Before going there, the main key difference here is that when you are on the S4 HANA stack, your visualization was always comprised within S4 HANA in the Fiori layer using SAP Fiori UI technology, which is based out of HTML5. So there is some restriction. That is the reason your predictions or your visualizations are always in a particular fashion. But now we are outside of the S4 HANA stack. We are on the SAP Analytics Cloud. SAP Analytics Cloud, if you remember, in the past, it was based out of the SAP Lumira functionality, which is similar to your, like you might have heard the other names like Tableau and other things, which were, I think the Tableau was acquired by Salesforce later on. So SAP Lumira in the past was kind of a competitor to Tableau functionality, and which is pretty much similar. So the visualization capabilities or the BI dashboard capabilities were similar to SAP Lumira, that is part of SAP Analytics Cloud. And to add a little more into the background, SAP Analytics Cloud is also built based on the fundamentals of SAP Business Objects. You remember the acquisition of Business Objects functionality, where you have your Business Objects Explorer, your Crystal reports, and so on and so forth. So all that functionality was kind of rehashed and built into Lumira, SAP Lumira, and then which later on became SAP Analytics Cloud. And additionally, if you remember, in my podcast too, I was talking about the historical background of SAP's journey from pre S4 HANA days. So when we discussed about the pre S4 HANA days, we also briefly discussed about SAP predictive analysis tool, which was a homegrown solution. And also we discussed about the SAP's acquisition of KXCN. So SAP predictive analytics was a product based out of the SAP's homegrown SAP predictive analysis tool plus the acquisition of KXCN, which became SAP SAP predictive analytics tool or the desktop tool. The SAP's homegrown predictive analysis tool had all these HANA-based PAL algorithms or the predictive analysis library. And you remember in the podcast 4, we did discuss about the different algorithms, the different flavors of the algorithms, and how you could do a lot more of this non-coded approach with that. And then we also discussed about the KXCN or the acquisition of SAP's KXCN, where we had the uh, KXCN related algorithms, or we call it as automated predictive library, the APL library. So these are the two parts of this SAP predictive analytics tool. So when SAP Analytics Cloud was formed, it had all the good features of SAP Lumira, which has some of these business objects related BI dashboarding features. And then the other pillar is obviously planning. Planning is a very huge component. One of my colleague, Mark Burke, is very experienced in talking about or sharing any insights on planning. In the same way, one of my colleague, Mr. Sridhar Muthuramlingam, is very experienced in talking about the SAP BI dashboards or analytics related scenarios, which we will talk about later. So the third pillar is about the predictive analytics or predictive analysis related algorithms. So in this third pillar, when SAP Analytics Cloud offering was formed uh, as a cloud offering, when we moved from SAP Predictive Analytics desktop tool into SAP Analytics Cloud, the APL functionality or the APL algorithms out of the SAP Predictive Analytics desktop client made part of the SAP Analytics Cloud, because that has more of the non-coded assets. The PAL library, like I have discussed in the past in podcast 4, always had some coded assets. Whereas the APL library, which was acquisition from KXCN, has always this non-coded assets. And that is where it made its way into SAP Analytics Cloud, because we wanted to create a complete user intuitive way of a wizard-like approach for the business user to create these predictive algorithms. So why I wanted to kind of give the complete background while I was explaining is that I want the audience to understand how and where we came from and what is the motive in building this. The overall idea is that for the business user, you want to create some quick templates and then leave it out there so that the business user can run different reports or different templates when they are creating their BI dashboards with some planning layouts and some BI user stories. They could also add these predictive features. And when the customer or the partners like these, some of these features, later on these can be implemented into the business process using the either the embedded approach or as a side-by-side approach. But with the concepts available with SAP Analytics Cloud, you can quickly create lots of templates, and this can later on uh, act as a input or a feedback back into the S4 HANA stack. That was the whole idea of building all these up. So now going back in here, so we said that now, yes, you have a whitelisted CDS view, and based on the whitelisted CDS view from S4, you built a custom CDS view, and now you could use either the live connection mode or the data acquisition mode, and you can leverage one of these modes and you can build, you can leverage SAP Analytics Cloud, and then you can build your predictive models, right? That's what we said. If it is a live connection mode, of course, you directly do the proper configuration scenarios in S4, and then you build your predictive scenarios. If it is a data acquisition mode, it depends. I think you can go back and check into the documentation, wherein there are some scenarios which would work for live connection, whereas some scenarios work for data acquisition. So now let us go back. So what we are trying to do now, we are trying to create based on these uh, acquisition based on these whitelisted CDS views and the custom CDS view, which is built on top of that, leveraging one of these live connection mode or the data acquisition mode. We are leveraging SAP Analytics Cloud and building this predictive model. Now, one point, very important thing to note down is that when you're building the predictive services with SAP Analytics Cloud, we are predominantly focusing on the APL algorithms, the HANA-based APL algorithms. We are not touching the PAL algorithms because the PAL algorithms are much more diverse and they are very, of course, they have a lot of coded approach and you could do a lot more. But whereas with the APL approach, this is all non-coded and you could do wizard driven approach. So the models that we built or the virtual data model that we build on top of that and the predictive models that we build here are completely based out of the APL models. And again, now here we have, you could, since SAP Analytics Cloud runs on SAP Cloud Platform itself, though you are getting your CDS views and your whitelisted CDS views and the main application data from S4, like I mentioned, you could also get your uh, application related information from other peripheral networks from SAP or non-SAP or third party. And additionally, you could also use the business data lake functionality from your hyperscalers or whatever. And you could do all this data integration, right? And then you create your virtual data model in SAP Analytics Cloud and you can create a predictive model here. So now when you're creating the predictive model here, there are 4 different ways. And when you create the predictive model, on top of that, you create your user story, which is where your BI dashboards are created and planning related functionality could be done. Now, when you're creating the predictive model, there are different ways of doing it. You could leverage the smart predict functionality, which is predominantly focusing on doing forecasting or predictions based on your historical data and doing some predictions into the future, which is more on the time series algorithms. Apart from this, you also have the other smart assist services like your smart insights, smart discovery, or search to insight. Smart insights are nothing but it provides insights based on the data that is already available. The reason why we say it is smart insight because we put some additional prediction algorithms into that, like your classification regression algorithms, which will give much more detailed analysis on your data that you already have. The next thing is that smart discovery, which is where I was talking about. Smart discovery aspects look into the smart insights that you got from your data, and you could build some additional discovery on this data and kind of provide some additional recommendations or suggestions. And then you also have this additional search to insights. So now that you got all this, you could do additional search based on your insights. So these are all the different ways that are available as part of SAP Analytics Cloud predictive offerings, the predictive services that we have. Uh, like I have explained a bit in my the last 10-15 minutes, the now we talked about where the application, where your application related information or the functionality is coming in from, whether it is S4 or non-S4, or it can be the peripheral networks in SAP or non-SAP. We talked about the application functionality, and then we talked about the data. The data can come from S4, or data can come from SAP Cloud Platform or other SAP applications, or completely outside of SAP, which is from the hyperscalers, right? Now, these two are the one aspects of the application and the data. But now the third aspect is that the training data sets, right? Now, the training data sets could also be leveraged in different ways. You could leverage your training data sets. The data sets can come from different origins. Either it can be a training data set where you push in this training data sets as an Excel file into the SAP Analytics Cloud, and then in this context, the data set contains the values for the models, explanatory variables, and the target variables. And obviously, the data will be used to optimize the model's complete fit. That is one kind of a thing. We were trying to understand what kind of data sets are available, right? It can be a training data set, or it can be a apply in data set or an apply out data set. When I say apply in data set, the data set can be used for as an input for the application of the predictive model. So what happens exactly is that in this context, the data set contains the model's different explanatory variables, but not the target variables. So you all push in all the applying data set. The goal is like you want to evaluate the value of the target variable that you're using a trained model. That is another option. Then the other option is that you push in the apply out data set. A data set can be used as typically like an output for the application of your predictive model. So here what you do is that, in this context, what you do is that at the end of this application phase, the data set will contain the estimated value of the target data set, the target variable for all the records of the applying data set. So this is how you have, we talked about how the application functionality can come from different sources, S4 or other non-S4. We can also talk about the data. We also talked about the data sets, how you can apply these data sets. So that is how all these things will tie in together. Uh, so now that you got all of these in here, now you have your functionality, you take your functionality out, you create additional virtual data model with the functionality of the different table functions that are coming in from S4 or non-S4, and then you can either directly do a live connection into S4, or you can do acquisition into the S4 data sets and other non-S4 data models, and then you can apply your data using your training data sets, or apply in, or uh, apply out data sets. And then finally what happens, you have your uh, visualization, or you have your prediction of the results. So based, the actual functionality is can be coming directly from S4, or it can be coming from S4 and the other uh, different sources, and then you have your predictions coming out, or your results coming out, and these results are visualized in the form of your uh, dashboards, or the BI dashboards, or the BI story in SAP Analytics Cloud. So one thing you have to remember here is that once this information is available, uh, the business user can now analyze this information here in SAP Analytics Cloud, and then later on make decisions whether uh, they can make different kinds of decisions, like, okay, this can really help them in proceeding further, because SAP Analytics Cloud itself works as a digital boardroom functionality, right? So it provides very in-depth reports, or very intuitive reporting. uh, or what they can do if he or she, the business, I mean the business user, whether it is he or she, they can, or the business partner or the consultant, they can uh, extend they can either do the visualization in SAP Analytics Cloud itself with these models, or if they feel that it's a very much more generic functionality, they could even make some assumptions or make some requirements, and they can proposals, and they can build it into the business process itself as an embedded model, leveraging the ISLM framework. Earlier it was, yeah, the PI framework, which is predictive analytics integrator. But now that with the, or they can even use as a side-by-side model and create a machine learning service with so on and so forth, complex functionality, right? The deep learning techniques. Uh, in the past, before using the ISLM technology, because before using the ISLM technology, we were using the predictive analytics integrator technology, where the models that were created, you will also have to there was no way these models could be changed, or these models could not be published. These models could not be changed, or they cannot be made any changes. So that's the reason we have provided an option of publishing these models or making any changes that were done using SAP Analytics Cloud. They could be published back into S4. But with the advent of ISLM, what you could do, you do not need this functionality, because any out of the box models that are built with ISLM in embedded S4 technology, they could always be updated with them within S4 itself. This is just an additional tidbit or an additional tooltip kind of a thing I'm giving here. So the overall concept here is that whatever functionality that you have been building using SAC, and leveraging with the templates, you could always visualize it in SAC, the BI dashboards, uh, and then you can leverage all this, and then the business user can get all the functionality needed there. So overall, what we are trying to achieve here is that we are providing the end user, or we are providing the consultants or the customers and the partners an additional way of leveraging or the machine learning functionality using SAP Analytics Cloud, which is a quick win, which is a quick way of depicting some predictive services functionality using SAP Analytics Cloud using the APL algorithms. Um, this is mainly predominantly this is used for building your BI dashboards with, and doing some planning scenarios, but you could also add some additional predictions. I wanted to give this approach a bit more thoughts, so that there will be more updates or more information coming about this in future. You can stay tuned on how the machine learning functionality will be enhanced here, because as you know that we have the embedded functionality in S4, we have the side-by-side functionality on SAP Cloud Platform, and we could also extend it with SAP Analytics Cloud. But there is a lot more things that are coming up. This is just that I want to give some quick background and quick overall picture about how the customers and partners can see how you can leverage SAC as well, and how this can build better and bigger things in future for the customers, because many customers might have your S4 might be using for your ERP functionality or your business functionality, and then many of the customers can use SAP Analytics Cloud for their uh, visual BI dashboarding needs, or uh, uh, because SAC provides an additional functionality where with the SAC Enterprise you can get a lot more intuitive dashboarding and other planning functionality. So we'll get to know, we'll hear more about that in the upcoming podcasts, or in the next few quarters. So with this, I will be closing this podcast 6. And in the next podcast, I will go a bit more into the functionality, or I'll go a bit more into how you can activate this functionality using the best practices explorer that we already have in SAP S4 context. In the next few podcasts, what we will do, we'll start with how you can activate this functionality, and then how you can, we'll also kind of discuss a bit more in the context of the different LOBs and the different industries, what kind of functionality is available, and if this functionality is embedded into S4, or if this functionality is available as a side-by-side scenario, as a deep learning technique, or how many of these industries are already leveraging this SAP Analytics Cloud functionality with the predictive services. So we'll all discuss in each of these podcasts in the upcoming series, or in the upcoming podcast sessions. Until then, I wish you all good luck and good evening. And thank you all. I appreciate your time in listening into these podcasts and the podcast series. Like I've always explained, you could always put your feedback by sending in a message to in my blog series, which is always linked in here, which is always linked into my podcast. You can search me up, Raghu Banda, SAP podcast, or machine learning. And then you can go into the SAP blogs, and then you can leave the comments or feedback there. If you have any additional questions, I can try to address that. And we'll come back with a lot more things in the future podcasts. Thank you all for your time. Have a good evening and good luck. Let's predict the future with SAP products. Bye bye.